Good morning, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. This one's been an interesting last 2 weeks, as the title said, and for those of you who've been asking and calling and messaging to find out how we are, trust me, I looked exactly like this 2 weeks ago as I'm looking now, so which is why it prompted me to talk about this. But it's going to be, today's talk is going to be 2 weeks in the life of a person who acquired the coronavirus, a psychologist first-hand account, so that's me. So, since March I've been talking on Facebook. We've been having these Facebook Lives where I've talked about the stress of the pandemic and how it's affected all of us, whether it's work, personally speaking, relationships, the new normal as we've been talking. And so when I acquired the virus along with Dad and one of our staff at home who is family for us, it drove the point home of the importance of psychological management of the virus and not just the physical management, which is why I wanted to talk about that. But let's be honest, COVID-19 falls on a spectrum, and there is such a variability in the illness's clinical presentation. There are people who are asymptomatic, who are carriers but don't show any symptoms. And then there are people who fall in the mild, moderate or severe categories. I want to emphasize that each case is different. The resources that come into play, and by that I mean psychological resources, how our bodies are made up, even environmental, financial, social resources. And so all of that in a way interacts to reflect on how the illness's outcome comes about. So please reflect on your own situations, reflect on what I will be talking about. I'm expressing my point of view, which may be different from yours depending on how you're seeing this entire COVID-19 situation. But the thing to ponder about is, a doctor says, you have mild fever, you have body ache, or you have headache, so that's a mild case. But the patient's subjective experience could be, but oh my God, I'm the one who's suffering, I can't manage this at home, I need to be admitted. So what's at play here? Or someone who the doctor classifies as severe may hesitate to step out of the house and get into the hospital because I'm just fearful of the hospitals, or I never liked the hospital. So what's at play here? Why are we seeing such varied responses? I'm going to talk about 4 main things today. The key role of our psychological makeup. Please focus on that bit the most. The way we perceive stressors. So if you've been following these videos that I've been having, that point, the first time when I spoke about how stress is perceived, the way we respond to them, the way we respond to the distressing thoughts and emotions that come by, and ultimately what we do in the face of an illness and how it influences the journey of the treatment. So how we respond to a stressor, again, is very important. Trust me, I may look like I'm very in control and charged, but when the diagnosis or when you start noticing symptoms come up, there is a psychological impact that comes about. I had it too, so I'm not immune to that. But then as that impact wears off and you start adjusting and you start managing, that determines the management of the illness as well. I cannot emphasize the role of social support more. It is important, but trust me, it comes as, it is sometimes a double-edged sword, and I'll talk about that. And again, important do's and don'ts in the psychological management of the illness. Please don't ask me for medical advice. You have physicians for that, but the psychological management, of course, I'm going to be talking about. Let's talk about the impact of the symptoms onset and the diagnosis first. So however robust an individual may be, and I'm speaking from my own experiences right now, the initial observation of the symptoms, whether in yourself or in my case, in my dad who's elderly, who has comorbidities, whatever be the symptoms, whether it's a fever, cold, a sore throat, whatever, again, please understand that each person's clinical presentation is different. It may lead to fear and worry initially. It is a normal response, please understand that. So I'm not saying, no, we all have to be zen and, of course it shouldn't affect us. Of course it will come, it will rattle us. But not all worry is bad, and I will talk about that in a bit. If I look at the journey from the onset to how it progresses, I'm going to classify the onset of the disease, in this case the COVID, with two types of stressors, and would like to explain that a bit, so bear with me on that. So there's that acute illness stressor. You notice the symptoms, and that itself starts worrying you, whether to self-isolate or not. Is this COVID? Oh my God, what next? The system needed to manage it at home, and that initial home quarantine, which one needs to kick into place as soon as these symptoms are observed, and even if they are mild, getting tested for COVID, receiving the diagnosis, and of course, if positive, figuring out the treatment protocol. So trust me, in our case, it lasted about a day or two. And again, everybody's resources are different. That initial impact, and I'll talk about that. That ongoing illness stressor. So, okay, you've received the diagnosis, if let's say, and I'm talking about mild in my case, but the uncertainty, because we don't know much about the virus, the worry, the watchful waiting for how the COVID-19 symptoms develop, it's supposed to, if at all, deteriorate. People talk about different days at which it comes about. The worry for self and family. The psychological impact of the self-isolation, especially if being in a room, if you are somebody who is the only person in the household who is affected, being cut away from family, and that itself has that ongoing stress. Of course, the distress of the physical symptoms itself. There are people who reported excruciating body aches, headaches, gastrointestinal symptoms, skin issues. Of course, those are unpleasant, and the fevers itself. And then, of course, threats to social relationships, even though it may not sometimes be imminent in the initial days, but what do we tell people at work? What do I tell family, friends? Whether it's because of the fear of stigma or whatever may be the reason, these tend to come about as the ongoing illness stressor. So I'm going to classify that as initial impact and the ongoing illness stressor. And I'll keep saying that let's recap about stress and its elements, which I had started talking about in March when India was under lockdown. A situation happens, in this case an illness that's caused so much stress since March in India because of the images we've seen on TV, what's being told for us, the fear that's being perpetuated. It does worry a lot of people because of what they've read, seen, heard, and how it's being managed. It triggers a response in us which combines and it comes as a combination as a stream of thoughts, images, beliefs, an emotional response and or a behavioral response. So be with me as I talk about what those thoughts, feelings and behaviors could be. So let's illustrate with an example. We received the diagnosis. Thoughts, some of them, and I'm saying look at the tinge and the tone of those thoughts, because that's what determines our emotional responses or influences that. How could this happen to me or us? Images of worst case scenarios, and trust me, that's what drives a lot of people out there. Hospital admissions, ICUs, ventilators, mortality, that comes as images, thoughts as well. But I took all the necessary care. This can't be true. This can't be happening to me. Or was I negligent in taking care of myself or my family? What will happen to me? So all these thoughts start coming by. The mind gallops literally, and emotions come by. When I continue to work with people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, there used to be this much talked about stage theory of an initial response to an illness or a disability, though it doesn't really hold true. But again, I'll say that there may be emotions that you may come by: shock, numbness, disbelief, guilt, anxiety, sadness, despair, irritability, anger, and there's no sequence. It could be that initial confusion comes up with that onslaught of emotions, but some people may experience that for a short amount of time. Behavioral responses could be fidgeting, pacing, just walking around aimlessly, shouting, screaming, withdrawal, from the situation, procrastination, delaying seeking treatment because they feel like maybe it's not as bad as we're thinking it to be. But so that may be there, but I'm going to talk about our own individual selves. The way we respond to a stress depends largely on our psychological makeup and the resources available, like I said. So I'm going to have you reflect on how your psychological makeup has been. How do you respond to stress? Are you somebody who's prone to excessive worrying, ruminations, anxiety, and as a result sometimes feel crippled by the emotions so much that you're unable to actually deal with the situation? Or are you somebody who rolls up sleeves and says, let's get to work, let's take charge of things? I'm telling you, it's how your response to a stress has been as your psychological build-up. It's something I want you guys to take care of. It was a constant debate in our home of 3 COVID-19 patients. One was me under home care, that my dad would often say, not everyone is calm as you, Divya, and I acknowledged it. So it was 2 anxious people against 1 in the house, but what brought the differences on? A lot of times people feel that they have no control over their anxiety, that this is how it is. And if that's your mindset, then I'm going to please have you request as a psychologist that we can take charge, we can learn techniques in the ways in how we manage stress and center ourselves. And briefly I'll share about that from my experience. Appraisals, how we perceive a situation. So if I look at it, my beliefs in the face of in the face of adversity, nothing teaches us more than our own experiences. But if I look back at how I've dealt with stressors in the past, it was very similar to how I dealt with COVID. Whether or not, now I keep saying, people may think, but you had a mild infection. Yes, we did. But trust me, the initial diagnosis, the initial way in which you receive the diagnosis and how you mobilize your resources to get the treatment depends on how you psychologically respond to that situation. Whatever be the situation, so my beliefs, and I'm going to share that, whatever be the situation, I need to manage it. So my belief in the values of resilience, so that's the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. I'm not saying I'm immune to stress, but stress happened, I center myself and I bounce back. My ability of being self-efficacious, which is taking charge of a situation, and my confidence in my ability to handle it, not single-handedly. I'm not thinking that I'm superwoman, but if I need support systems, which I did need, how do I mobilize that using medical resources, getting a method in place, and support of family and friends as well. Compassion in managing emotions of, as my friend very nicely called our home COVID ward, the emotions at home and empathizing with what my family members were going through, and patience to manage it all. You may counsel, you may reassure, but sometimes their worries were so much that all you could do was just mimic calmness and keep reassuring and keep calming. But if you got flustered and angry and said, I can't deal with this, you deal with, it's not going to help. So managing emotions at home, because I'm stemming from those values, becomes important. When I look at those values, I focus on being calm and centered. So when that initial anxiety hit me, when I got the call from Dad's physician saying he tested positive, I was getting ready to get to work, and of course I felt my heart racing. I felt like I couldn't hear the doctor. That was my anxiety crept up. But I knew that I needed to center myself, and I focused on my breathing. I calmed myself down. I notched up that psychological techniques of mindfulness that I used to center myself, to continue with that discussion with the physician. In my case, it may have taken 30 seconds to a minute. I know everybody's responses are different, but please, whenever you notice that initial anxiety rising, center yourself, whatever techniques you may use. My ongoing practice of good self-care, and if I look at it, what I was doing before I acquired the virus was what I continued to do as it went on. Now, truth be told, everybody's clinical symptoms are different. I did not experience any of the fatigue so far. And again, I'm saying I'm not celebrating that it's over. Yes, we did test negative on Friday. Our home isolation is over. We are being watchful, but I'm going to talk about that. But I didn't have the fatigue. So once the initial getting systems in place at home was taken care of, I started work on the 3rd day of my diagnosis. And clients would look at me and say, but you look fine. And I'm like, I am feeling fine. So I didn't experience the fatigue, the lethargy, which everybody assumes you tend to get. I wasn't acting out of bravado. When I would need rest, I would rest. But it helped that I was engaging meaningfully, purposefully in taking care of my dad, in taking care of Shishpal Bhaiya, who's our Man Friday, and not as a means of distraction. There's a difference. The techniques of mindfulness, grounding, centering, that I feel are one of the most important tools in my toolkit. Now again, that belief, accepting what can't be changed. I can't change I don't have control over the course of the symptoms as they develop. We were doing everything, whatever the doctor would advise. We were following all the advice that was given, or the temperaments of people at home, but taking charge of what I could. So, whether it was whatever was needed to done to manage our home, the anxieties of the COVID ward patients, or reaching out for support when I needed it. But the biggest thing that helped, trust me, was rationing my resources to manage what was of importance and of need at that time. Our health, our home, our sanity, and my clients who I was continuing to work with through this. A lot of friends and family, I would say most of them, 90% got to know about us testing positive through social media when I blogged about it. I did get some flack saying you should have at least told us, but trust me, we told, Dad shared it with his siblings, I shared it with mine, and a couple of close friends. The number of calls that come, what happened, are you guys doing okay? Now, that itself was a bit much to manage. So I rationed my resources. So please continue to do that, because everybody wants the stories. On-set, management, what are you doing? There's so much panic. That is in their voice that I needed to calm them down as well, and I realized it was not helping me. That ongoing stress response that I spoke about, that anticipation, that uncertainty. The perception of illness symptoms is, of course, related to how uncertain and ambiguous it is, coupled with the anticipation of negative outcomes. And of course, you've heard me talk about catastrophizing, fortune telling, predicting worst case scenarios as what our minds churn out whenever we are faced with a stressor. What if symptoms worsen? And yes, I did go through that. There were these whole discussions about the fear that people were experiencing and wanting to admit my father. But I'm saying, symptomatically he's fine. So there was always this tussle between home management and Envision, and then finally how we manage systems in place day by day, getting tested, seeing how those test results came, listening to the doctor's advice to see what the protocol and treatment should be. So we were prepared because we wanted Dad to be safe. We wanted the best care for him, keeping in mind his temperament, if he's admitted, for what, because symptomatically he was fine. We were monitoring at home, how would he do in home isolation, in hospital isolation, so there were all these discussions that happened. I have heard of, ever since I've blogged, I've had several people reach out, and the initial panic with even mild symptoms was, what if I die, should I write my will? Images of past regrets, remorse, I need to beg forgiveness, like the worst case, even in mild onset symptoms, there were a lot of these thoughts that came by with people. We watched moments painfully by. Trust me, the first couple of days for us, while even we had the home quarantine and the home management in place, you observe if anything changes, you observe if symptoms develop, and as days go by, you realize that somebody, when I said, we were looking to sanitize our home once all this ended, they said, wow, 17 days over, and I said, yeah, can you believe it? So I classify worrying as productive or unproductive. And I was worried for that. There is no doubt about it. We had plans in place in case symptoms deteriorated, but I didn't want to be caught in the stream of ruminations. What if, what if, what if? I called this productive worry. That okay, we are monitoring, we are checking vitals, his tests are fine, I need to watch for those symptoms. And if that develops, we notify the doctor, we have a system in place. We had systems in place because it helped for us to be calm and to plan ahead. Unproductive worrying, and I will talk about it, what if my symptoms don't improve? And it's mild. I lost sense of taste and smell, and my first love, for those of you who know me very well, is coffee. So for me the biggest thing was I can't smell or taste coffee, and so I just, oh well, we'll see, we'll wait till it comes back, or even if it doesn't, I'll just imagine how it used to smell. We've heard about concentration problems, anxiety, memory issues that come by. So what if I develop those? What if I'm never able to work again? What if the agencies come and forcefully admit us? Now those are worries which we may not find answers to. It's just waiting to see how it develops. If you have to worry, make it productive, make it solution focused. Let it energize you rather than crippling you. So worrying, not all worrying is bad. I would rather you ask yourself, is this productive worry or is this unproductive worry? As the days rolled by, the uncertainty diminished. We notice a stabling of symptoms, well-being improves because you start processing the illness differently. It's not as fearful, it's not as scary as it has been shown to us. And again, I'm going to talk about the mild or the asymptomatic. Please don't get me wrong. For those who've been through the moderate and severe and who required hospitalizations, I know, I can understand that it would have been a very distressing time for you and continues to be, but I hope you continue to take care of yourselves through this. You have discussions with your treating physicians, they check on you regularly, you think the symptoms are steady, you act on the course of action and you start exerting some control. Now you may ask, how do you control a virus like this? How do we control the symptoms? The 2-3 things that I realized that helped was protocols advised by the doctors, which we followed, which included medications, the vitamins, the supplements, proper nutrition. So despite if I was given cooked cardboard, I would have probably eaten it because I couldn't tell the difference. Rest, sleep, having your immunity boosting foods, whatever those be, and there's a whole spectrum of that as well. Managing your stress, engaging in life meaningfully. There were a lot of people who provided support in faith and belief in a higher power. So whether they prayed for us, chanted, whatever, they feel they have control over that they're going to survive a serious illness. So that itself is a system that may help someone who's religious, who's spiritual, get a sense of calm and control. But the biggest one, of course, from my point of view, would be the coping strategies that you deploy. Problem solving focused, taking charge, taking action, making sure everybody is calm, resolving conflicts that may be happening in the family, solution focused based, what needs to be done, home management, hospitalization, whatever. Emotion focused, and emotion focused may be 2 kinds, which are, whether you're doing your meditations, you're journaling, you're talking to a friend, you're reframing. And when I mean reframing, it's shifting the way you see the problem rather than getting overwhelmed by it. So like I said, there were all these jokes around my loss of taste, and humor actually helped, but I was able to see humor in that situation. Reframing techniques aren't about tricking yourself, but it's almost like, oh well, so be it. This is how I'm going to manage it. But looking from a benefit point of view, I said, good, maybe I'll just portion control because it doesn't really matter. The taste doesn't matter, so I may end up losing weight, which has been my goal for a gazillion years, but new perspectives. I'm going to talk about the social support, how we as family, as friends respond to our loved ones' illnesses. It serves many functions. The thing that a lot of my friends, and I've spoken about it, I'm somebody who shares that I am, when you believe in self-efficacy, you don't believe that you're an island, but I do, like I said, ration my resources and was focusing on things at home. But social support is needed. That source of meaningful, valued engagement in relationships, often distraction from the illness when people bring calm and cheer. Please understand that when you call someone who is affected and you are anxious and you are flustered, it doesn't help them. So call and and respond to what they need in that situation, and you provide encouragement, you provide emotional support, you provide functional support. Do you need groceries? Do you need medicines? Is there anything else that you need which I can drop off at home for you? The importance of peer support, and I didn't realize when I blogged about it how many people reached out, and they were either they had a loved one who was COVID positive, or they themselves were. How do they manage? When somebody is a part of an in-group, they understand that pain, and that becomes valuable as well. Social support can be a double-edged sword, so please be conscious of how you express that social support. When someone wishes for emotional support and receives unsolicited advice, it may be seen as a burden and unsupportive. So please ask how you can support someone rather than operating from your own point of view. Empathy and compassion helps. Please understand, and in my case, there were people who I couldn't respond to was return calls or WhatsApp messages. I said, please understand, there is a lot that goes on in terms of management, which I would like you to understand. So don't take it personally that, oh, she's not taking my calls. Do's and don'ts, and I'm going to classify that in 3 groups of you guys who may be listening. For those of you who are worrying still about the pandemic and are uninfected and from the virus, please reflect on your stress management techniques, your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior. Are you somebody who's resorted to alcohol, drugs, smoking to calm your emotions down? What is going on? And if you are the one who honestly gets overwhelmed, anxious, crippled with fear, and numb in the face of stress, please work on taking steps to manage that, to develop effective coping responses. Trust me, it's not just for this interim, it will help you in the long term to be able to manage with stress as well. Resilience, self-efficacy, the ability to manage a situation despite the stress. I'm not wishing away the pain and the emotions that came by. I'm saying despite the stress, can you mobilize your resources and calm and center yourself down and deal with the situation, because your intellectual resources will be needed to manage a situation like this. The other thing which I observed, which I hadn't observed till COVID struck our home, was the all or none thinking that goes on in COVID. That you're either uninfected or you are infected and it is like doomsday prognosis. I observed that people didn't focus on the mild symptoms that I was telling them, that we were mild, like it was really fortunate enough for us that we had, that it was just a mild one, but they had expressed fear and seriousness and the worst case scenario for us. I was the calm one, and I'm not being immodest about it, but I had to take the added responsibility of managing their stress and telling us, no, listen, we're okay. And I understand that when you're sitting at a distance, you don't know the reality of the situation in our home. But trust me, we were managing okay. I wasn't hiding, I wasn't putting up a front. And that's where I felt the rationing of resources was needed. I spoke about it when the 2 weeks was done, and I was able to take calls then. Do's and don'ts if you would like to provide support to someone who acquired the coronavirus. Please do not ask them how they acquired the infection. I could tell when people had read whether they had read or hadn't read the blog, because when they called and said, "Kaise hua? How did you get it?" I'm like, okay. I know it was TLDR, it's a term that I realized too long didn't read, that's also okay, but they were honest about the fact that they didn't read. People may themselves be reeling from the guilt associated or anger associated, that did I miss something, or was my family member careless that I got it, whatever. We are dealing with our own emotions around it. Again, I'll repeat, ask how you can support them. Is there anything you need? Is there, and if they say yes, it would help if you could drop these medicines or food or, anything else you need. Emotional support versus functional support. Please provide hope and healing. Our man Fry, Shishpal's wife, was my constant support as well. She was telling him yesterday that she read in the paper that, himmat padhao, boost someone's hope and healing, be there as a support. Yes, you may see it, when we've had cases where worst case scenarios were predicted, especially because of dad's age. But we were recovering, but the person didn't see that we were recovering. And I can understand that it was stemming from concern, but I realized that it was their own worry speaking. And you are not seeing the situation objectively. So we are the ones who know our situation. So ask us, we are so glad you're recovering well. Godspeed, best wishes to you, so happy for you. That's, and I'll tell you how that's different from post-viral. Please educate about the facts of COVID, the infectivity rate. Don't be uncomfortable around people who have recovered from COVID, or if you interact with them once they've recovered, you're like, should I get myself tested? Or fears that they may be carriers. There is an infectivity rate of the virus. In India, at least, once your home management ends, if it's asymptomatic or mild, you're not required to be retested. We did, because dad wanted to just make sure, and we were negative. So that's also something to please educate rather than operate on feelings and fears. People hide the diagnosis still because of the stigma associated. Healthcare professionals acquiring infections are seen as a virtuous act. It's a line of duty. They're putting themselves there. But someone else may be perceived as callous and careless. Trust me, we may have taken all the necessary precautions, but still end up getting infected with the way rates are rising. So spare the judgments, that stigma that gets associated with it. Do's and don'ts for those affected by the virus. Please establish trust in a doctor and stay with their advice. That's been one of the best things for us. We have a great doctor who we trusted, who checked in on us, and that truly helped. Please listen to your body. This virus isn't to be messed with. If you need rest, please take rest. Don't minimize the impact of the virus on our symptoms. I had a mild bout, which I said, and while I quarantined at home, I did everything possible to take care of my mind and body, and including our other COVID ward patients. And like I said, this was my priority, and I will still say, so that it drives the point home. Self-care included proper sleep, nutritious meals despite having no taste and smell. I just ate because I know I needed the energy and the immunity to be maintained. Staying active at home. So while I had to, of course, not step out, but Dad and I would walk in the house every morning and evening, 25 minutes, because we were, in a way, we had recovered soon after the symptoms, but we were, of course, tiding out the home quarantine. I continued with my psychotherapy sessions with my clients as much as was possible, keeping in mind the demands on me. So I wasn't somebody who was, gloating with the fact that, no, I'm fine, but I did. It helped me keep sane. Managing stress, mindfulness techniques, pranayams, yoga, exercise, whatever you can manage at home. And breathing exercises just to keep lungs healthy and not get affected. And it, in a way, helps staying calm as well. Please be watchful as you go through the recovery period and even the post-viral recovery. Myalgia, continuing fever, weakness, fatigue, systemic complications may come by. But it may not affect everyone, but still, I would rather be prudent, be cautious, be mindful, I would live well, I would live mindfully, but I wouldn't want to live in fear that I curtail all my activities. Incidences of anxiety, especially acute stress or post-traumatic stress disorder, have been reported from people who recovered from COVID, from hospitalizations, or from that self-isolation at home. Please seek help if you're continuing to have flashbacks, images, can't sleep, or a lot of anxiety even after the illness has gone by. All three of us tested negative on Friday. Dad and I shifted our walks from outside the house, from inside the house to outside. The rest of our lives resume how it was before COVID struck us. I can't wait to get back to running, but I'm going to build on that gradually and see how my body responds to it. So far, so good. The biggest takeaway for me, and please remember that, again, I'm speaking from my perspective. I've heard of people who may not have the luxury of space to move around in the house, but there is isolation that's required, that you need to take proactive care of both mind and body. Despite mild symptoms, the mind is constantly looking for deterioration, justifiably so, worsening, and it's anything but comfortable to be flooded with negative thoughts, anxieties, images, and commonly, like I call, radio doom and gloom, which just predicts that worst case scenario. For those of you who have had, or you've known somebody who had moderate to severe symptoms, of course the impact is much more because the hospitalization can be a terrifying experience, but that is the recommended treatment. I will still say, I know, I support, I understand that it is a stressful period, but please take care of your emotional and mental health as well, and reach out for professional support, especially for those. I've heard people whose parents, one parent is in the hospital and they are, and they can't meet them. So I know there is stress associated with the severe to moderate symptoms as well, but please take care of your symptoms as well. So, and of course, I think back to when somebody keeps saying, but please take care, continue to take care. There's one thing my mother used to say, which she used to say, it's a body, something or the other will keep happening. I think that perspective helped me, because you realize that, yeah, you are watchful, you are being mindful, you're not fearful. I am still, taking, like when Dad and I go for walks, today is our second day, we still carry an oximeter just to see, is his breathlessness because of he himself says I get anxious, or is it because his saturation is affected, but his saturation is being steady since. So that attitude helps, but not bravado, not fear. So just that middle ground that we need to keep looking for. Like I said, I think the peer support helps. So if there is anything I can do to, other than providing medical management, I can of course guide you to resources that I have known. But if there's anything I can do to support any of you on this journey, please feel free to drop in a message as and when you can. So that's it from now, and thank you for being patient listeners.